"I'm not clean," she whispered, and when the cloth fell, the human's heart stopped. The hum of the human ship Horizon's reach filled the air like a low heartbeat. The metal walls vibrated softly as the ship cruised through the debris-filled sector near the Veil Nebula. Its mission was simple on paper: pick up survivors, bring them to safety, and report back. In reality, it was always more complicated. Space never made anything simple. Evan pressed his hands against the edge of the medical bay doorway, watching. He had spent weeks fixing systems across the ship, but this bay always felt different. It smelled of antiseptic and alien metal, a strange combination that made his stomach tighten. Today, he wasn't here to repair a broken pipe or a failing comlink. Today, he was here because someone needed him, someone very fragile, very strange, and very secretive. He glanced at the patient area. Covered in heavy cloth, lying on the padded bed, was an alien woman. The staff moved quietly around her, their tentacle-like arms brushing the cloth lightly as if it might shatter if handled too roughly. Her species was not hostile. In fact, humans had met many aliens who needed help, some of them dangerous, some of them fragile. But she was different. Something about her made even the strongest medics pause and speak in low tones when her name was mentioned. Saren. No one explained why, not really. The records were sparse, and translation programs had failed to make much sense. All Evan knew was that she had been brought in after a raid, injured and alone. Her own people had abandoned her, or worse, labeled her as something not fit to be seen. "Unclean," the logs said. He had read the word, but he didn't understand its weight, not yet. "Evan," a voice called softly from behind him. He turned to see Dr. Leora, head of the medical team, her eyes tired but sharp. "Be careful. She isn't used to humans. She doesn't trust anyone yet. Don't make her uncomfortable." "I know," Evan replied. He pushed the feeling of unease away and stepped forward. "I just want to help." Leora gave a small, tight smile. "Then do what humans do best, fix what you can, and don't panic when things aren't normal." Evan nodded and approached the bed. Saren's head was tilted slightly to the side. Even beneath the layers of cloth, her body language spoke volumes: cautious, tense, alert. She had survived something the records refused to fully describe, and her every movement suggested she expected danger around every corner. When she noticed him, she lifted her head slightly and whispered, her voice like dry leaves brushing together in a cold wind. He wasn't afraid, not in the usual way. No, this was something different, something human minds couldn't calculate. It wasn't fear of physical harm. It was anticipation, a warning of mystery. I won't," he said, keeping his voice calm, careful not to provoke her. "I just want to help you, Saren." She studied him with eyes that seemed older than centuries. For a moment, silence filled the room. The only sound was the low hum of the ship and the rhythmic beeping of life monitors. Evan realized that the whole crew had gone quiet, holding their breaths, waiting to see what would happen next. Then she turned her gaze back to the ceiling. "Help, yes, but do not touch what I hide." He nodded. "I won't." And yet, even as he spoke, he couldn't stop the curiosity building inside him. Humans were explorers by nature. Seeing the unknown, understanding it, solving it, that was what made them strong. But this was no ordinary repair task. This was someone's life, and her life had scars no human eye had seen before. The hours passed slowly. Evan began by repairing the life support systems in her room, adjusting the environmental controls so that the temperature and humidity matched her comfort range. He observed her reactions carefully. Every small twitch, every movement of her hands beneath the cloth gave him clues about her limits and fears. He noticed that even the slightest touch made her flinch, yet she seemed to relax slightly when he worked near the machines rather than near her directly. By evening, Leora allowed him to approach closer. "She trusts you more than anyone else," the doctor whispered. "Try to understand her. Not everyone survives what she has." Evan sat down at a careful distance, running diagnostics on her vitals. His eyes, trained to notice anomalies, noticed the subtle signs of enhanced recovery in her body. Cuts and bruises that should have taken weeks to heal were closing faster, and her heart rate responded to stimuli in ways he had never seen. There was something remarkable about her biology, something human tech could only barely comprehend. "I don't understand," he said aloud. "Why would anyone call you unclean? You're strong, you survived." Saren's eyes flicked toward him. There was a spark there, like a candle trying to resist the wind. "Survive, yes, but they marked me. They said I carry shame. You will see if you look." "I won't look," he said firmly. He meant it. But the human mind had a way of noticing details even without seeing. And already he had noticed that her body had been altered somehow, not just injured. Something was fused with her, integrated into her flesh in ways no human procedure could replicate. Whatever they had done to her, it was not weakness. It was different. That night the ship drifted through space, the stars outside the viewport stretching into long streaks. Evan couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he imagined the cloth falling and revealing what Saren had warned him about. Yet he also imagined her survival, her strength. Humans were never content to leave mysteries unsolved, and he was no exception. The next morning, the emergency alert system blared. A minor hull breach in the lower maintenance bay. Evan grabbed his tools and ran, but when he returned, he found Saren awake and sitting up, her cloth still tightly wrapped around her. She had moved while he was gone, careful, deliberate, yet strong. Humans were impressed by survivors, but seeing her move like that, it was remarkable. "Are you okay?" Evan asked, careful to respect her space. "I am," she said. "Better because you are here not looking." That phrase struck him, not just the words, but the meaning. Her trust wasn't given lightly. Humans respected courage, yes, but they valued patience even more. And in this quiet corner of space, patience had a power humans often underestimated. Over the following days, Evan continued his work. He repaired life systems, adjusted medical interfaces, and monitored her progress. Slowly, she allowed him closer. A hand would brush the edge of a tool, a shoulder would relax as he calibrated a sensor. She still warned him not to look, but her voice grew less harsh, more accepting. And then something unexpected happened. During a routine check, a small accident triggered the medical sensors. The cloth slipped slightly. Not fully, but enough that Evan glimpsed the edge of what lay beneath. His heart stopped, not from fear, not from horror, but from realization. The edge of her skin was fused with a living biotechnological implant. It moved slightly, almost like it was alive. And yet, it was beautiful in its complexity. He stepped back, blinking rapidly, forcing his mind to process what he had seen. Humans had never encountered anything like this. Not in simulations, not in archives, not in stories. And here it was, a living combination of flesh and technology, surviving the worst the universe could throw at it. Saren noticed his reaction. "Do you see now? I am unclean. They told me I am broken. Do you see?" Evan's voice was quiet but firm. "I see strength. I see survival. I see someone the universe tried to break and failed. That is more than clean. That is rare. That is remarkable." For the first time, her eyes softened. She didn't smile, not exactly, but the tension in her body eased. Humans understood survival in a way her people had forgotten. To survive was not shameful. To survive was honor. Evan realized something then. His mission had changed. He wasn't here just to fix systems or monitor vitals. He was here to witness strength and to help someone who had been left for dead reclaim her place in the universe. The days continued like this. Saren still kept her cloth, still warned him not to look, still whispered about being unclean. But Evan's respect and admiration only grew. Humans didn't fear what they couldn't understand. They studied it, learned from it, and when possible, used it to survive. And here in the quiet corridors of Horizon's Reach, he realized something profound. Humanity did not see weakness as a final word. They saw opportunity. By the end of the week, Evan had grown to understand small things about her culture. The cloth was not just protection, it was a symbol, a warning, a declaration. It marked her as someone who had been targeted and left behind, a survivor of atrocities humans could barely imagine. And yet she lived, she breathed, she adapted. And slowly, under the careful patience of a human engineer, she began to trust. The final night of Part 1 drew close. Stars streaked past the viewport, silent witnesses to the quiet bond forming in the medical bay. Saren lay on her bed, the cloth heavy but no longer entirely oppressive. Evan sat nearby, watching her monitor, knowing he had glimpsed the beginning of something extraordinary. He didn't know what the future would bring. He didn't know if she would ever fully remove the cloth, or if her people would ever understand her true power. But he did know one thing. Humans could see beyond fear, beyond shame, beyond what others called unclean. Humans could see strength, and in this quiet, small corner of the galaxy, strength had a name. Saren. The day began with a soft light spilling through the viewport of the medical bay. Horizon's Reach drifted through the edges of a dying star cluster, the nebula casting strange colors across the walls. Evan leaned over his tablet, scanning the logs of Saren's vital signs. They were stable, more than stable. Her heart, her respiration, even her neural responses were extraordinary. He had studied many species before, but Saren's physiology defied patterns. Some readings looked almost like human, but then micro-movements under her skin, impossible to hide, betrayed something else, something living yet machine-like. The medics whispered that it was biosymbiosis. He had no better word. Whatever it was, it had kept her alive long after anyone else should have died. A soft chime sounded, signaling her awakening. Evan stood and approached cautiously. Saren was sitting on the edge of her bed, the heavy cloth draped like armor, her gaze fixed on the floor. She did not acknowledge him, but she did not recoil either. "Good morning," Evan said gently. "How are you feeling?" She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes flicked to him, and then she spoke in a low whisper. Evan nodded. "I understand, I just want to help." She didn't respond. Instead, she adjusted the cloth around her shoulders and stood carefully, her movements deliberate. Evan noticed the way her feet, though covered, moved with precision. There was no hesitation, no tremor. Her body had learned to adapt, even after the worst trauma. Over the next few hours, Evan worked near her, repairing the monitors, checking environmental controls, and observing her reactions. The medical bay was quiet except for the soft hum of machinery and the occasional beep from her life monitors. Every time she moved, he noticed subtle signals, micro-adjustments of her muscles, skin that glimmered slightly under the light, patterns that reminded him of living circuits. "Evan," she said suddenly, her voice low but firm, "do you wish to see?" Evan froze. He did not answer immediately. Humans were naturally curious, but he knew the weight of this moment. It was not his place to force trust, only to be patient and observant. "I want to understand," he said slowly. "Not to judge, not to scare you, just to understand." Her eyes narrowed slightly, then softened. "Then, perhaps you will see, but do not speak of it to others. They cannot accept it." With careful hands, she adjusted the folds of the cloth. Evan noticed a faint shimmer at the edge of her shoulder. A mechanical pattern, delicate and moving slightly like it had a life of its own. Not metal, not synthetic, not fully flesh, something in between. Something that had saved her life over and over again. When the cloth shifted just enough, Evan's heart stopped, not with fear but with awe. The first glimpse was enough to show him that she had survived experiments no human or alien should have survived. Her body was a map of survival and adaptation, a living example of endurance. Where others might have seen deformity or shame, he saw a story of strength written into living tissue. "You see now," Saren whispered, "I am what they call unclean. They believed I was broken, but I survived." "Yes," Evan said softly. "I see survival, I see strength. I see someone who should never have lived but did, and that is remarkable." Her eyes searched his face, uncertain. "Do you understand?" "I do," he replied. "You are not weak, you are not broken, you are proof." The words hung between them, fragile and heavy. Evan realized that for humans, proof was more than evidence. It was a recognition of capability. In a way, it was honor. And for the first time, Saren did not flinch. She did not pull the cloth tighter. The days that followed were a mixture of study, repair, and careful trust. Evan began to log her responses to environmental changes, noting the way her enhanced physiology responded to stress. Her recovery from minor injuries was faster than anything recorded, her reflexes almost preternatural, her endurance unmatched. She could withstand temperature swings, radiation exposure, and physical strain far beyond human limits. One evening, Evan stayed late, running diagnostics on her neurological responses. He noticed something unusual. Her brain activity did not just react to stimuli, it adapted. Memory patterns shifted in real time, integrating new knowledge almost instantly. She learned from experience in ways that seemed almost algorithmic, yet entirely biological. "You are not just surviving," Evan whispered to himself. "You are evolving." Saren heard him and tilted her head slightly. "Humans, you notice things others do not," he smiled faintly. Humans were trained to notice patterns, to calculate outcomes, to see possibilities where others saw only chaos. "It is what we do," he said. "We do not leave questions unanswered. We do not leave survivors unrecognized." The next morning, the ship's sensors detected a weak energy signature approaching. Evan knew immediately it was not human. The signal was small, almost hidden in the nebula's interference, but clear to human instruments. He alerted command. "Potential threat," he said. but perhaps not immediately hostile. The crew moved quickly, preparing defenses. Saren watched silently, her eyes narrowing as the readings grew stronger. Evan noticed that her body reacted almost instinctively, muscles tensing, breathing adjusting, subtle micro-movements signaling readiness. "You know this feeling?" he asked softly. "Yes," she said. "I survived because I learned to feel before it came." When the energy signature finally resolved, it was a small alien scout vessel, damaged and drifting. The life signs were faint but alive. Human protocol demanded rescue, and Evan volunteered to help bring the survivors aboard. Saren followed, silent, observing. Inside the shuttle bay, the scene was grim. The aliens inside were weak, injured, and frightened. They moved slowly, careful not to touch anything. Evan worked quickly, stabilizing them with medical patches and administering nutrients. Saren watched, her expression unreadable. Then one of the aliens stumbled, falling toward the edge of the platform. Evan moved instinctively to catch them, but Saren's hand shot out, faster than human eyes could follow. She steadied the alien, her grip firm yet gentle. The medics gasped. Even the humans had not anticipated the speed and precision of her reflexes. "You see," she whispered to Evan later as the shuttle bay emptied. "They thought I was weak. I am not." "I see," Evan said, still catching his breath. "You are extraordinary." She tilted her head, almost amused. "Then perhaps the humans are not so weak either." "You do not fear?" "No," Evan said firmly. "We respect strength, we honor survival, and we learn from it." Saren considered this, then finally allowed the cloth to shift slightly again. This time, the edge revealed more of the biomechanical patterns beneath. Evan did not flinch. He did not look away. He only observed, learning, appreciating. For the first time, Saren did not warn him. She only allowed him to see. And in that moment, a quiet bond formed. A bond of understanding, of respect, of human recognition of survival as strength. Over the next few days, the ship passed through a series of dangerous fields, asteroid clusters, radiation pockets, and residual debris from dead planets. Saren's abilities became invaluable. She adapted to environmental hazards faster than the humans, adjusting shields, moving debris, and stabilizing systems. Every time a human would have panicked, she acted decisively, efficiently, and without hesitation. Evan began to log these events, noting that her body and mind worked together in ways no human or alien had documented. She was more than survivor. She was an example of adaptation, proof of what life could endure and overcome. Humans had seen death in the void, yes, but rarely had they seen life so finely tuned to survive it. One night, as the ship drifted through a quiet nebula, Evan sat beside her bed. "Do you ever wonder," he asked softly, "why they called you unclean?" She looked away, her eyes reflecting the faint lights of the control panels. "They wanted to erase me, to hide me, to say I was nothing." "You are not nothing," Evan said firmly. "You are proof that life cannot be erased so easily. Humans understand this." "We do not fear survivors, we respect them," she considered his words. "Perhaps then I will stay, not hidden, not broken. If humans see me, perhaps others will too." "Yes," Evan said, smiling faintly. "And perhaps they will learn something about survival, about strength, about the universe." For the first time, Saren allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible relaxation. The cloth remained, but it no longer felt like armor. It was simply a layer, a choice, not a barrier. And in that quiet moment, Evan realized something powerful. Humans had a way of seeing beyond fear, beyond shame, beyond what others called unclean. They saw possibility. They saw potential. They saw strength. And Saren, for the first time in years, allowed herself to be seen, not as broken, not as unclean, but as what she truly was, extraordinary. The horizon's reach moved like a silent predator through the cold reaches of the nebula. Outside, stars shone weakly through the dust and gas, their light bending in strange ways. Inside, the ship hummed with quiet efficiency, the crew focused on their routines. Yet beneath the calm, tension simmered. Sensors had picked up a pattern, something approaching from the outer edge of the nebula. Something deliberate, something alive. Evan was in the control bay, analyzing the readings. Every signal, every fluctuation screamed danger, but the source was strange. Not like the alien raiders the humans had fought before. This was precise, intelligent, and yet unfamiliar. He glanced toward the medical bay. Saren was there, sitting quietly on her bed, eyes closed, hands folded. She sensed things humans rarely noticed, Subtle shifts in gravity, micro-ripples in the electromagnetic field, the tiniest change in the flow of energy through the ship. Evan knew she was ready. "Evan," Saren said suddenly, her voice calm but strong. "They are coming." "Not to negotiate, to destroy," he nodded. "I know, and we are ready, but they will underestimate you, as they always do." A faint smile touched her lips. Humans did not fear what they could not understand. They acted with patience, with calculation, with courage. She had learned that slowly in the quiet corridors of Horizon's Reach. And now she would show it. The enemy arrived without warning. Sensors flared, alarms blared, and the ship's crew moved into battle stations. Outside, through the reinforced viewports, a fleet appeared. Sleek, black, predatory ships, their engines cutting through the nebula like knives. The enemy was known as the Varkari, a species that had destroyed countless colonies in their expansion. They believed themselves unstoppable. Evan's heart raced, but not with fear. Humans had faced impossible odds before, and here next to him, Saren's presence calmed him. She moved to the observation deck, standing tall, her cloth shifting slightly as if it were alive. Evan watched her closely. Every motion, every glance told him that she had already calculated every possible outcome. The first Varkari vessel fired. Lasers cut through the nebula, striking the outer shields of Horizon's Reach. The ship shuddered, but it held. Evan and the crew responded immediately, rerouting power to reinforce shields and weapons. Saren placed her hand lightly on the control panel, her eyes scanning patterns the sensors did not even display. "They will try to flank us," she said softly. "Left and right. Focus fire on the middle. That is the weak point." Evan blinked. How could she know? He had watched the Varkari battle simulations for years, yet no human had ever predicted a move this precisely. He turned to the tactical display and saw it unfold exactly as she had said. The enemy ships shifted, aiming to strike from both sides, and the humans were ready. The battle began in earnest. Explosions rocked the ship, lights flickered, and alarms screamed. The Varkari were skilled, but their strategy relied on fear and assumption. Saren, silent and calm, guided the crew through the chaos. She pointed out weak points, predicted enemy movements, and adjusted the ship's systems faster than any human commander could. Evan watched, awestruck. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a force. Her body moved with grace and precision, enhanced by the biotechnological adaptations that humans had glimpsed but barely understood. She did not just react, she anticipated. She adapted. She dominated. On the bridge, Captain Renab barked orders, but it was Saren's subtle guidance that turned the tide. Shields held. Weapons found their marks. One by one, the enemy ships faltered, their attacks thwarted by tactics they had never encountered. The crew whispered among themselves, astonished. Humans were clever, yes, but this was beyond clever. This was instinct and adaptation fused with knowledge. Evan felt a surge of pride. Humans had always respected strength, but here it was magnified. Not just in themselves, but in someone they had rescued, someone they had once thought weak. And now that strength was saving them all. The battle raged on for hours. Outside, debris floated in the nebula, remnants of destroyed ships spinning slowly in the void. The Varkari were relentless, but they had underestimated the combination of human ingenuity and Saren's unique abilities. Every time they struck, she predicted, countered, and corrected. Finally, the enemy leader's vessel moved closer, its size dwarfing the others. Evan watched tense. This ship was the command vessel, the source of the Varkari's coordination. If it fell, the fleet would collapse. "Evan," Saren said, her voice calm, almost serene. "They rely on fear. They believe I am broken. They are wrong. Let me show them." Without waiting for permission, she moved toward the tactical interface. Her fingers brushed against the console, and the ship responded as if it were an extension of her body. Shields shifted, weapons aligned, and the enemy's attacks were neutralized before they could even strike. Evan's breath caught. He had never seen anything like this. The Varkari were strong, fast, and deadly, but Saren was faster. "Focus on the command ship," she instructed. "Do not fear, do not falter, strike together." The crew followed, inspired by her calm determination. The humans had faced impossible odds before, but this was different. They were no longer just defending. They were leading, guided by someone the universe had tried to erase. As the Varkari command ship drew closer, Saren's adaptations became fully evident. Her body moved in perfect harmony with the ship's systems. Neural interfaces woven into her flesh allowed her to process data faster than any human mind could manage. Her reflexes were instantaneous, her predictions flawless. She was a living weapon, but one controlled not by rage or aggression, but by strategy, calculation, and patience. Evan realized something profound. Humans were not the only ones who survived against impossible odds. But they were the only ones who saw survivors for what they truly were: proof, inspiration, and strength. The first strike on the Varkari command ship succeeded beyond expectations. The enemy vessel staggered, systems failing, engines faltering. The rest of the fleet hesitated, unsure how to respond. Saren moved among the tactical controls, guiding human weapons to exploit every weakness. One by one, the enemy ships fell or retreated, their precision undermined by human strategy amplified through her abilities. Evan's heart swelled with pride. This was humanity in action, not perfect, not invincible, but clever, patient, and resilient. And now, with Saren, they were unstoppable. Hours passed, and the battle finally drew to a close. The Varkari fleet, once confident and predatory, had been decimated. The survivors fled into the nebula, leaving Horizon's Reach victorious. The crew erupted in cheers, but Evan's eyes were on Saren. She stood quietly, the cloth still draped around her, eyes scanning the final readings. She had saved them all, not with brute strength, but with precision, intelligence, and adaptation. Captain Renaud approached, her expression a mixture of relief and awe. "Saren," she said, voice steady despite the adrenaline, "you changed everything. We would have lost without you." Saren inclined her head slightly. "I did what I had to. You listened. You did not fear. That is why we survived." Evan smiled, understanding finally what humans had always known. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. Strength was not the absence of injury, but the ability to endure. And humanity, when combined with someone like Saren, could achieve the impossible. Later, in the quiet of the medical bay, Saren finally allowed herself to relax fully. The cloth remained, but it no longer felt like armor. It was a choice, a comfort, not a barrier. Evan watched, respecting her space, understanding that this was a fragile moment of trust. "You are more than anyone expected," he said softly. "Not broken, not unclean, strong." Her eyes met his, and for the first time she let a small smile touch her lips. "Perhaps strength is what humans understand best." Evan nodded. "We honor it, we see it, and we learn from it." Outside the ship, the stars stretched infinitely, silent witnesses to the events that had unfolded. A small human vessel and a survivor alien had turned the tide against a force that believed itself unstoppable. And for the first time, Saren allowed herself to believe that she belonged, not as a survivor to hide, but as a warrior to be recognized, respected, and admired. Evan realized that this was only the beginning. The universe would test them again. There would be more battles, more danger, more enemies who believed humans were weak. But with courage, patience, and respect for strength, human strength, anything was possible. And in this quiet moment, Saren, once called unclean, stood as proof of what humans had always known. Survival was not shame. Survival was honor. Strength was not feared, it was respected. And together, humanity and this extraordinary survivor could face whatever the stars might send next. The calm after the battle had not lasted long. Even as the crew of the Horizon's Reach celebrated their hard-won victory, the sensors flared once more. This time, the readings were unmistakable. A new Varkari fleet was approaching, larger, faster, and more aggressive than the one they had faced before. Every system aboard the ship shivered in anticipation of the incoming assault. Evan stood on the bridge, staring at the tactical display. His fingers tapped nervously against the console, rerouting shields and weapons. The fleet wasn't just a threat, it was an announcement. The Varkari had underestimated humanity before, but they would not make the same mistake twice. Saren stood beside him, her eyes scanning the display. The cloth covering her shoulders shifted slightly in the artificial light, but her posture was steady, confident. The calmness she radiated was magnetic, almost unnatural in the face of such overwhelming danger. "They are larger," Evan said. "Much larger. If we face them head-on, we will be torn apart." Saren nodded. "Then we do not face them head-on, we use what they do not expect." "Humans, you are patient. You learn from mistakes. You adapt. That is why you survive. Now we must show them why they cannot destroy you." Evan swallowed hard. Humans respected strength, but even he knew that this challenge was enormous. Yet looking at Saren, he realized something powerful. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a leader, a strategist, and a force multiplier. She could amplify human ingenuity in ways no human could do alone. The Varkari arrived without warning. The nebula shifted violently as hundreds of black ships emerged from hidden channels of energy. Their engines flared, lasers streaking the colored gas like deadly threads. The horizon's reach trembled under the first strikes, shields flaring in brilliant arcs of energy. "Evan," Saren said, her voice quiet but firm, "focus on coordination, trust the crew. They will follow your lead, and trust me, I will guide us through." Evan nodded, heart racing. The humans on the bridge looked to him, but their confidence was drawn from something beyond orders. It was drawn from Saren. They trusted her in ways they had never trusted anyone. The first wave of attacks came fast. Enemy ships attempted to surround them, striking from multiple angles. The crew responded with precision, but the enemy's strategy was aggressive and unfamiliar. Saren moved among the consoles like a ghost, her hands brushing over controls, adjusting shields, guiding weapons, predicting enemy movements. Evan's eyes widened. She wasn't just reacting, she was anticipating. The biotechnological implants fused with her body allowed her to process information faster than any human could, integrating data, predicting outcomes, and responding in real time. "Left flank compromised," she said softly, yet everyone heard her clearly. "Redirect power to Sector 3. Weapons ready, fire on my mark." The crew obeyed. Lasers flared, striking enemy ships with deadly accuracy. Shields stabilized. Systems hummed with newfound efficiency. One by one, Varkari vessels faltered, their attacks neutralized before they could fully execute. Evan felt a surge of pride. Humans had always thrived under pressure, but this was extraordinary. They were not just surviving. They were leading, guided by someone the universe had once tried to erase. The Varkari leader's vessel emerged next, larger and more menacing than anything Evan had ever seen. Its engines glowed a deep red, its hull black as the void, bristling with weaponry. It was the heart of the fleet. Destroy it and the others would retreat. But doing so would not be easy. Saren studied the display. "They rely on fear, they believe I am weak. They will try to break us with intimidation. Ignore them, focus on the gaps, strike where they cannot anticipate." The humans obeyed, guided by her calm. Laser beams danced across the nebula, strikes hitting their marks with perfect timing. The Varkari commander's ship staggered under the precision of the human attacks, shields faltering, engines failing. Yet it fought back, striking the outer ships of the horizon's reach, tearing through armor, shaking corridors, sending sparks flying. Evan dodged a falling console, his heart racing, but Saren's calm presence steadied him. She was everywhere at once, adjusting power, redirecting shields, guiding weapons. Humans had never seen anything like this. She was a force of nature, a living weapon, but not one fueled by anger. She was fueled by strategy, patience, and survival instinct. Hours passed. The battle continued without pause. Every time the Varkari pressed forward, Saren found a way to counter, to anticipate, to adapt. The crew followed her lead, their trust in her absolute. Human ingenuity combined with her abilities created something new, a hybrid of skill and survival that the enemy could not comprehend. At one point, a massive Varkari ship broke through the shields, heading straight for the bridge. Alarms screamed and the humans froze. Evan prepared to take evasive action, but Saren moved first. She placed her hand on the tactical interface, her body glowing faintly as the biotechnological implants synced with the ship's systems. The shields shifted instantly, weapons fired, and the enemy vessel was hurled back, its trajectory corrected, engines failing. The humans stared in disbelief. One survivor, once called unclean, had just saved the bridge from total destruction. Captain Renat approached Saren, eyes wide. How are you doing this?" "I am not doing it alone," she said quietly. "The ship responds to me, yes. But the humans, they act with clarity, precision, and courage. That is why we survive." The captain nodded slowly. "Then together we finish this." The final phase of the battle began. The Varkari command ship advanced, its weapons focused entirely on the horizon's reach. The crew braced, hearts pounding, but Saren remained calm. She studied every movement, predicted every strike, and guided the humans to exploit weaknesses no one else could see. Evan felt the power of her presence. Humans had always thrived under impossible odds, but this was beyond imagination. She was not just a survivor. She was a teacher, a strategist, a beacon of what humanity could inspire in others. The decisive strike came when Saren coordinated a simultaneous attack on the enemy command vessel's engines and weapon systems. Shields overloaded, hull breached, and the massive ship began to drift uncontrollably into the nebula. Smaller Varkari ships, seeing their leader falter, attempted to retreat, but Saren anticipated their moves as well. She guided the humans to intercept and disable them, one by one. Finally, the battlefield fell silent. The Varkari fleet had been defeated. The Horizon's Reach floated among the stars, battered but intact. The crew cheered, exhausted and elated, yet Evan's eyes remained on Saren. She stood quietly, cloth still wrapped around her, her expression unreadable. "You did it," he said softly. "You saved us all." She inclined her head slightly. "We did it. Humans do not fear what they do not understand. They respect strength. That is why we survived. That is why we will survive again." Later, in the quiet of the medical bay, Evan watched as Saren finally loosened the cloth slightly. Not fully, but enough that the intricate patterns beneath were revealed. No longer were they hidden. Now they were proof of survival, adaptation, and unbreakable will. "You are extraordinary," Evan said softly. "Not broken, not unclean, strong." Saren looked at him, eyes reflecting the nebula's colors. "Perhaps humans understand strength better than anyone. That is why I will stay visible. That is why I will fight alongside you." Outside, the stars stretched infinitely, silent witnesses to the events that had unfolded. One human ship, guided by one extraordinary survivor, had turned the tide against a fleet that believed itself unstoppable. And now Saren could step fully into the role she was meant to play, not hidden, not ashamed, but as a symbol of what survival, adaptation, and courage could achieve. Evan realized, as he watched her, that humanity had learned something powerful. Not every survivor needed pity or fear. Some deserved respect, admiration, and trust. And when humanity combined patience, ingenuity, and courage with such a survivor, they could achieve the impossible. The nebula's light shifted again, casting strange colors over the ship. Horizon's Reach floated in silence, ready for whatever the universe might send next. And Saren, once called unclean, stood as living proof of the power of strength, trust, and human recognition.